What's up, guys? John here. Los Angeles is in the process of bringing forward another eviction moratorium.
We have a housing crisis. We need you to take action today.
So what is full relief? Full relief is an eviction moratorium now.
And if that sounds familiar, the last time they did this, they froze rents for nearly 3 years.
City Council has voted to delay making any decisions on tenant protections for fire victims.
The proposals included a moratorium on eviction.
Tenants stopped paying by the thousands, and at the end, there was nearly $1 billion in unpaid rent. It turned the entire housing market upside down. But here's the thing, 2025 is not 2020. Rents are higher and interest rates are crushing homeowners and investors.
Rents are up and mortgage applications are down across Southern California. Plus, people here are already spending way more on housing than experts say we should.
And inflation as a whole is squeezing everyone. So the real question is, if we pause on evictions again, who survives this time and who gets wiped out? When the pandemic hit in 2020, Los Angeles rolled the strictest eviction moratorium out that America has ever seen. Overnight, landlords could not evict tenants for failure to pay. Eviction filings fell by 90%. The courts were practically silent. Some say that sounds like a win, right? Not exactly. By late 2022, UCLA came out and said 278,000 households were behind on rent, owing almost $1 billion combined.
Even with the minimum wage increasing to $17.81 per hour in LA County this July, it's still a struggle to pay the rent.
It's still not enough to pay the average rent in LA County.
That's money small landlords needed to pay insurance, taxes, and their mortgages. But these property owners had no way to collect. And I saw this coming. There was a brief lapse in the eviction moratorium in 2021, and I liquidated a building that I developed. I thought the future was likely going to be spiraling out of control for landlords in LA. So I sold it, and I missed the peak of the market by about 60 days. But it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, because looking at things now, who would want to be a landlord in LA? Things got a lot crazier since. Then came January 2023. Protections expired and reality hit. Eviction filings spiked 74% higher than the year before. This is the fastest surge in nearly a decade. Tenants and families that thought that they were safe and protected for not paying rent now had sheriffs at their door. And for landlords, especially mom and pops, it was chaos. Some had already sold out. Others finally tried to evict and got buried in court backlog. For small landlords, the moratorium was brutal. If you own a small duplex and one tenant stops paying, that's half of your income. And it's gone overnight. A lot of these owners drained their life savings just to stay afloat. Some couldn't hang on, and they were forced to sell their building to the highest bidder, often a corporation, who had the cash sitting, and they were patient, waiting for a really good opportunity. For some tenants, they say the eviction moratorium was a lifeline. It kept thousands of families from being evicted, but it came with a very big catch. When the protections ended, the tenants weren't behind a month or two. Some were behind a couple years. Some owing $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 in back rent. So imagine living with debt over your head. And Gavin Newsom said during that very period, don't worry, if you can't afford your rent, we will step in and pay it for you. And then he doesn't end up paying it. The landlord evicts and then pursues you for that very judgment amount that was promised to be paid by the state of California. So essentially both sides got squeezed. Landlords are being pictured as villains when they themselves are struggling. Tenants felt like they were going to be protected, but at the end, they got stuck as well. The last moratorium ended in the middle of COVID. Jobs were disappearing, but interest rates were at near zero. And landlords could refinance and survive because back then, they said it was like free money. Fast forward today, the landscape could not be more different. Rents in Los Angeles are already higher than ever, averaging about $2,400 a month, up about 10% since 2020. Home prices, even after dipping in 2022, are still near record highs. And mortgage rates, they've more than doubled. That means landlords cannot refinance and get breathing room. And new buyers can't easily step in and buy properties when they hit the market. Meanwhile, tenants are stretched thinner than ever. Inflation has eaten away at paychecks. Grocery and gas prices are still elevated. And layoffs have been creeping through the job market. For families living paycheck to paycheck, another eviction freeze doesn't ease the pressure. It just pushes the crisis further down the road. And another moratorium means that landlords cannot push off the cost of rising insurance, taxes, and property upkeep to the tenant. So this isn't just 2020. A new moratorium today collides with an already cracking economy. Here's what makes this round even scarier. Wages have not kept up with the cost of living. Back in 2019, the median household was bringing in roughly $76,000 per year. By 2023, it bumped to about $83,000, a 9% increase. Now compare that to the cost. Average asking rents in LA County in 2020 were about $2,200, and in 2022, about $2,400 a month. Home prices, they shot up nearly 25% in a single year during the pandemic. And even after cooling off, they're still near record highs. And don't forget, groceries, gas, and insurance up double digits since 2019.
Food prices started rising rapidly during COVID, and since then,
homeowners nationwide are facing a crisis, right? Skyrocketing insurance premiums or outright policy non-renewal.
So when you add an eviction moratorium on top of this, it's not just a pause button. It's pressing the pause button as rent, debt, and the cost of living meter keeps running. And eventually someone has to pay the tab. So at the end, who comes out ahead with an eviction moratorium? Let's be real, there's always winners and always losers. Winners in the beginning might be the tenant, who get rent relief, there's no sheriff at the door. Politicians can also pretend to claim victory, saying that they're protecting family and combating inequality. And the big corporate landlords, they got the reserves to hold out, knowing that they can scoop up so many incredible opportunities when many mom and pops simply can't hold on. Now the losers, it's gonna be the small landlords. One that owns the duplex, the triplex, the fourplex in Boyle Heights and East LA, in the up and coming areas that bought that property in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, thinking this is gonna be my retirement plan. Well, not so fast. Another freeze could put a lot more pressure on all of these property owners. And a lot of these property owners own most of the housing stock. And for renters, in the short term, it'll feel like protection. But when that debt piles up and the protections expire, investors are gonna run in. So the cycle will repeat. Relief today and a fallout tomorrow. So here's the bigger picture. Eviction moratoriums aren't just a one-off policy. It's part of a much bigger picture where the state steps in on property rights in America. And private control begins to slip away in a place like LA. Think about it. In 2021, California passed SB 9, which killed single-family zoning statewide. Suddenly, any homeowner could split the lot and build duplexes up to a fourplex on a lot where one home used to reside. Then came SB 10. This let local cities override voter initiatives and rezone entire neighborhoods near transit. They said this is for apartments to cut the red tape. And now with SB 79, the state is overriding local zoning even more, opening the door for mid-rise apartment complexes near bus stops and rail stops, even in neighborhoods that never imagined it. Put it all together and you'll see the trend clearly. Landlords in LA are losing their rights. Homeowners are losing control over their blocks, and Sacramento is saying, we know best. Eviction moratoriums are just one tool inside of their toolbox. So what does the future look like in Los Angeles if eviction moratoriums come back? Based on last time, expect another backlog of eviction cases building up throughout all courts in LA. And smaller landlords, the ones barely holding on, will either sell, borrow, or lose their properties. And when that happens, who steps in? Is it the first-time homebuyer? I don't think so. It's deep-pocketed investors, private equity, Wall Street, and those with tons of cash waiting for great opportunity. At the same time, with zoning laws like SB 9, SB 10, and now SB 79, together are reshaping entire neighborhoods. That means while small landlords are fighting to survive, we could also begin seeing mid-rise apartment buildings popping up next to million-dollar homes throughout LA County. All of this together is pushed through by state law. Put it all together, and you have California's new housing market, where laws are being forced down the throat of property owners to strip away their rights. Government control, without question, is expanding by the day. And the gap between small property owner and big landlord is growing. And honestly, we're just in the first inning. So now it's your turn. If you were an LA landlord, would you stick through another eviction moratorium or sell out before the next wave? And if you're a renter, do you think this actually protects you, or do you think that things will just get worse as Wall Street or a deep pocket investor buys the property of a small mom and pop landlord? Down the road, will things get better or will things get harder? Because one thing is clear, California is not slowing down on housing experiments. The only question is, are you ready for when the cranes start showing up and the rules change overnight. If we see a dynamic where rents freeze, they increase inventory with all these new laws that are being passed, and insurance, like State Farm, for example, they've increased insurance rates over 30% in the last 12 months. If insurance is going up, rents are frozen, and inventory continues to rise, landlord rights continue to get pulled out, it could be a unique dynamic unfolding for a lot of landlords throughout that city, especially as we see so many landlords being forced to refinance at such a difficult time. Let's have a conversation below. What are your thoughts about the future of LA's multifamily real estate market? Catch you next video.